Gray is here on the Blaze Radio Network.
And welcome to it.
Oops. Good morning, American.
Yeah, there we go.
It's Friday.
Okay. Yeah. Everything's right with the world now. So relax. So is Sweet 16, that's today, right?
Starts today.
Started yesterday.
Well,
yeah,
did
they
start
did have
yesterday?
Some games yesterday, yeah. They did.
Who played?
That's right.
Who played? I missed it. I thought it started on Thursday, but I didn't
it's
check.
always,
They were, they were late
Friday,
games,
Saturday.
though, right? There was a bunch of...
Yeah, they started too late. I didn't see much of them.
Well, there's only 8 games this weekend, so you got to start them late.
Yeah.
You can't be doing them all day.
Well, I mean, some of us go to bed early.
Yeah, these were like 9 and 10 o'clock. Late games. Late games.
Illinois beat Iowa State by 3. Alabama beat North Carolina by 2.
Illinois, wait, okay, so Illinois lost?
No,
Iowa
Illinois
State lost to
Yeah.
Illinois. Who else?
Alabama beat North Carolina by 2.
Oh, that's surprising.
Connecticut beat San Diego State by 30.
UConn plays Illinois now.
Clemson beat Arizona by 5. Tonight you've got
Clemson beat Arizona?
Yeah.
Wow.
NC State, the last of the Cinderellas, plays Marquette tonight. Gonzaga, Purdue, Duke, Houston, Creighton, Tennessee.
I mean, they're an ACC team, not much of a Cinderella.
Well, they're 11
Also, BYU beat
and
them.
they won their tournament on a miracle run. This is
was that five games in 5 days or something?
Yeah. Bloodbath back here, by the way. This is
why are you threatening the American people
gross.
like that?
No kidding.
I was just talking about my bracket. This is my bracket.
America heard it.
What?
America heard.
Yes.
The threat you just made to all American citizens with a bloodbath.
It's my bracket.
We heard it.
Oh, and by the way, the worst presidents of all time. It's down to the not so elite 8. You've got Woodrow Wilson versus Franklin Roosevelt today. This is pinned to the top of my Twitter page there at Keith Malinak. Joe Biden, Andrew Jackson will be tomorrow. Barack Obama will take on Jimmy Carter, and Lyndon Johnson.
That's a good fight. That's a good battle.
Yeah. And Lyndon Johnson will be battling Bill Clinton.
You know, the Obama-Carter matchup might be the toughest one yet, right?
Huh.
The others have been blowouts, haven't they? Has there been a close one?
Yeah. I mean, Andrew Jackson against James Buchanan. That was the closest one, 57-43.
Okay.
I mean, when James Buchanan and Andrew Jackson meet up, you can throw out the
record books.
Yeah, you throw
for
it
sure. For sure.
Yeah.
When they're meeting for worst president rights?
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah. That's a battle royale, as they say.
I think Lyndon Johnson, Bill Clinton's going to be a
be
close
big
one. I mean, LBJ should run away with it.
He should, but will he? Because you got the recency bias.
But tell me you don't want Bill Clinton
Right, we
as
were
president
talking
today.
earlier. Bill Clinton's presidency is like Americana now.
Yeah, it is. It just is. You could almost say that about Obama. Things are so bad.
Don't.
I'm not going to, but you almost could.
Almost.
Oh, man. What a world.
Uh-huh.
Now, I have to know how badly Abraham Lincoln got beat in his matchup with who was it?
So he was going up.
That he was even among.
I know, that hurts.
That hurts.
That kind of hurts.
That hurts. It shows that he was born in the South.
Okay, on Stu Does America last night.
That's a great point.
I was on there, and we
That's a
talked about
great
this,
point.
and I covered a few bases. So go check out Stu's show if you'd like. But LBJ won 91-9 over Abe.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Should have been 100-0.
Yes.
But whatever. Okay. I think he probably had some joke votes there.
I'm
going to vote for Abraham Lincoln.
I agree. LBJ should have won 100-0.
Yeah.
But that's why Abraham Lincoln was in as a 4 seed. LBJ's a 1 seed.
4 seed.
He shouldn't have even been a seed.
Right. Thank you. He would in my bracket. No, I didn't make one. But if I did and I was doing best, he'd be in best president's bracket. Yeah, for sure.
And now Stu did ask me
3.
last night where I was born and raised, and it's like, okay,
Georgia.
We don't need to
Let's
talk about.
see.
Yeah.
I wonder.
Same person who used the word bloodbath.
Thank you.
That's me.
Thank you.
Guilty.
That's exactly right.
Same person who says 100% way too much.
Said it all day yesterday.
It's not 100%. It's just 100.
Is it?
Chill, boomer.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
What does that mean?
All right. I was going to ask you, what generation are you from? Like you're
The silent.
What's the before the greatest generation? I think it was
It's the gone dead generation. That's
It's
what I'm
the
The Walking
he's
Dead.
from the Renaissance.
The Walking Dead.
The Renaissance generation.
The Walking Dead.
And the Walking
generation.
Dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But hey, you know what? We might get some information today that may want you to vote more for LBJ as the worst president of all time.
Holy cow.
Who knows where this trail leads?
Yeah. Today's our JFK show. And is our guest here? Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. I didn't see anything up on the board, so I had no idea. Huh.
He's on Skype.
Okay. We got Chuck Ochelli, who is the host of One Man Gang at Ochelli.com. He's a JFK researcher, among many other things. Chuck, welcome to The Blaze.
How you doing? It's amazing to hear you guys so energetic this early in the morning.
Yeah, well,
that's what we do.
It's the drugs.
Yeah, it's something you kind of have to do when you do it for a living. Otherwise,
I hear you.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about JFK. He was apparently he was the subject of controversy and has been for 60 years now, and the Warren Commission that was assigned to investigate his assassination came up with virtually nothing except the fact that that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone shooter, and that's kind of where they left things. So walk us through where things are and where they should be to get us started.
Well, do you want to begin with the controversy before the assassination, or do you want to just begin with that Friday morning?
Let's start with
which one would you like?
Let's start with the controversy before the assassination. That might be a good place to start.
Well, sure, plenty of it. Look, there's lots of claims about maybe his mob-linked family had stolen an election and this and that in 1960. There's all sorts of controversy over, believe it or not, election controversy existed previous to 2020. Yeah, just saying. But that happened. And there was lots of things about it. He's too young. He's too this. He's too that. And certainly we have the Cuban Missile Crisis, which occurs. We have the Bay of Pigs, which occurs. We have, problems where we just about came to nuclear blows in multiple locations on the planet because this was at the height of the Cold War. And indeed, the conservatives did not appreciate him at the time, but neither did the liberals. Interesting. Yeah. If you examine his policies today, how would you take them? Was he for big business? No. Was he for the little man? Maybe not always. Not exactly the liberal hero people draw him out to be. Not the war hawk people draw him out to be. Very interesting historical figure to begin with. And indeed, this contributes to what happens on a Friday morning, much like this one in Texas in 1963.
Yeah, and I mean, that was to the point where even his Catholicism was an issue at the time, right? Because we'd never had a Catholic president up until then.
Absolutely. That was the first Catholic president. You know who the second is. Or does he know who he is? Anyway, leave that alone. The point is, what is happening here? Yes, he's a Catholic. Yes, he's too young. What about his father? Was his father, somebody who appeased people? But let's get on to the assassination. Because, again, on a rainy Friday morning, just like it is here in Georgia today, in Texas, he begins in Fort Worth and comes out at about this time of day. About 7 a.m., something like that, and introduces himself, goes to a breakfast, and goes to a hop, skip, and a jump to a slightly hostile place called Dallas, Texas. Why do I say slightly hostile? Because people were handing out wanted posters for him, saying that he was a communist, that he was a threat to America, that he was somebody who... Does any of this sound familiar?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Why? Let me stop you there for just a sec. Why did people consider him a communist or a communist sympathizer?
Well, he was willing to talk to the Russians, you see. He was willing to, negotiate with them. See, I don't know, these themes sound familiar again. It's problematic when you're talking about cooperation, when you're talking about abolishing war, as he did in his speeches previous to that Friday morning. Once again, though, let's get back to Dallas. Around lunchtime, he just about makes his way to the end of a road trip from Love Field, and here is where the incident occurs in a place called Dealey Plaza.
Right.
Interesting historical location, very small. If you haven't been there, you should visit it. It's rather striking, especially if you go up on the railroad bridge and take a look down at the entire plaza. you get strange ideas. But anyway, the Secret Service, did they do a good job? Not necessarily. Lyndon Baines Johnson in a car behind him. Since you mentioned him, and oh, by the way, in my bracket, because I'm from Jersey, Woodrow Wilson is my favorite in your bracket.
Oh, yes.
But anyway, because there is a president to be beheld when it comes to wrecking stuff. Anyway, back to it. Shots ring out. We are aware of this. This did happen.
Yeah.
Some people claim it was falsified, this and that, but then again, you know what? It's all possible if an alien hangs from his toes and all of that, from an invisible UFO. Yes. It's all possible. Mm-hmm. But I'm making jokes here. There is something very serious about this when a guy who was going to extract us from the Vietnam War, who was not going to allow that to go on for a decade and cause a scar on multiple generations and, give us the 80,000 dead, not so bad, but the fact that 1 million men were returned to this country in one way or another, mutilated either physically, spiritually, or psychologically, that had an effect on my generation, which is the X generation. That wouldn't have happened had JFK not been publicly executed on November 22nd, 1963.
Yeah.
Because that was changing right then and there. And then we get to another guy in your bracket taking over and getting himself a reputation and all that. Now I'm trying to squeeze all this into one little tiny box. Not easy, and there's been a lot of investigation. You want to know where things are today. Do you want to get to that point now, or do we have time?
Well, I mean, there's so many theories. Let's get to the theories.
Anywhere,
Yeah.
Well, theories. What is plausible? What is possible? What is reasonable from the conspiracy advocate side of things? If you're on the government side, you have two different equal and yet separate and yet qualified conclusions. One being that a lone assassin named Lee Harvey Oswald killed the president and then was killed by another lone nut named Jack Ruby for no apparent reason. There's your Warren Commission conclusion. On the other hand, in the 1970s, another official conclusion by the House Select Committee, which is on record as well, is that it is most likely the result of a conspiracy. Right. But Lee Harvey Oswald is still the killer.
Yeah, they just don't. They don't spell out what conspiracy.
Correct.
Right. The House Select Committee on Assassinations didn't really speculate on what the conspiracy was or who was involved, for that matter.
Yeah, the statement basically should read, we don't have all of the mechanisms to go after this. The Justice Department ought to go into it. Here you go. Yeah. What did they do? Nothing.
And that happened in 1979.
Concluded in 79, right. And immediately followed by the chairman of that committee turning around and putting out a book immediately afterwards with the same writer who wrote the report, stating that basically the mob did it, even though that's not as viable a solution as people would like to believe, in my mind, but that's my opinion.
Although Jack Ruby was affiliated with the mob, right? I mean, we do pretty well have that fact substantiated.
Well, what do you call the mob? Is he affiliated with organized crime? Remember, I got a vowel at the end of my name, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, the deal is, I love these little asides. It's always fun. The thing is that, look, is he affiliated with the mob proper? What do you call the mob? The Italian mafia? Well, certainly not a member. People claim he's a member of the Jewish mafia, et cetera, et cetera. That's a controversial thing. And believe me, no ethnic slur. Every ethnicity should have a mob and pretty much does. So, here we go.
Yeah.
Is he affiliated with organized crime? Yes. Is he actually a government informant? Guess what? We have records saying that too. Is he somebody who's tied to gun running in Cuba? And yes, indeed, the Italian mafia, when it comes to trying to be a go-between guy, a bag man, and maybe making payments to people. Yeah, absolutely. He's one of those guys. Weird that he wants to do his patriotic duty and shoot Lee Harvey Oswald so that Jackie Kennedy doesn't have to come back to Dallas to testify.
Yeah,
that was nice of him.
Part of the idea.
Yeah,
it was awfully nice of him. No, and by the way, that's a whole other rabbit hole that requires a lot of work as well. Plus, you have the murder of J.D. Tippit, which nobody ever wants to solve either.
Right.
The police officer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the police officer was killed.
Well, didn't they blamed Oswald for that, if I remember correctly?
Yes, absolutely. That was one of the two charges against him. Actually, he was charged with that first. And then a little bit after 1:30 in the morning, I believe, local time, they sent a judge down there to formally charge him with murdering the president, to which he replied, "This is ridiculous," and they hauled him away. But of course, he had been through a bunch of ridiculous things, like an absolutely nonsensical lineup. A lawyer showing up and being turned away, even though he didn't have legal representation, which he complained about on television repeatedly. Along with saying they had committed no acts of violence and that he was not guilty of these things, and confused because, in fact, he had lived in the Soviet Union previously. Oops, did I forget to mention that part? He had been a defector to the Soviet Union, literally speaking, and oh, by the way, we did have a false defector program at exactly that time. Somebody else we know about, and these are all provable things that we've been able to collect, by the way, a lot of what I'm saying here. We've been able to collect direct evidence about government involvement and things that I'm mentioning along the way because of the JFK Records Collection Act, which, by the way, happens, in the 1990s after Oliver Stone causes a public outcry, and it combines with a pre-existing release the files movement among JFK researchers. I know I'm trying to throw 100 things at you, but you ask them.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, no,
it's a lot.
I got a lot of work.
Well, there is a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. There is a lot.
A lot of ground to cover.
So let's do this. How about we do this, Chuck? The conventional wisdom, or I should say the government line, is that Lee Harvey Oswald,
lone shooter, Texas School Book Depository,
magic bullet,
case closed. Right?
Went to Russia, went to the Soviet Union, and became sort of a Soviet agent. Right.
Yep.
He had even renounced his citizenship. He defected. But then, how was he allowed back into the country without any problem? That's interesting.
I guess so. Where I was going, Chuck, is that
it's even weirder.
Right. So for the person tuning in right now that has always been taught that just assumes that that's the story and that's the truth, work through that.
Yeah. Why is that preposterous?
And tell us why that he's not the guy.
Well, let me give you some bullet points real fast about a guy who's awfully strange that the CIA says they had no interest in, and every other government agency has always said they have no interest in, despite the fact that we now have files saying they definitely had a lot of interest in him. He only lived to be 24 years of age. Let's start there, okay? And keep that in context. So he joins the Marines, tries to join when he's too young, does join when he's old enough, goes in there, and then gets out on a hardship discharge, right? Why? His mom is sick. He's got to go home and take care of her. Another weird story in and of herself, but leave that alone. So he goes there, stays with mom a little while, and then immediately goes to the Soviet Union by way of something that nobody has quite solved exactly how he got there. He gets to the Soviet Union, asks to renounce his citizenship in an American consulate, throws his passport on the desk of a guy who, by the way, we find out later, not only is a consulate guy and works for the State Department, but, as per usual, State Department and CIA at the same time, and the thing is, he meets a journalist who, by the way, is also in contact with the CIA, again, in Russia while he's there in 1959, all right? So he does all that, meets a lady named Marina Oswald, who, by the way, she's now Oswald, but at that time she was something else. Surakova, I might be pronouncing it wrong. Anyway, her uncle is a general, with the KGB and with every other military organization. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, maybe that's not so atypical, but so happens she also ran into a couple of other people that we know were part of that false defector program. Anyway, coincidentally, he's there. He's doing pretty well. They put him in Minsk, which today, is in Belarus and all that, right near the KGB's main archive and, where they had a very serious stronghold, and they watched everybody. He asked more than one woman to marry him and then decided to run back to the United States a couple years later. Really a little sooner than that, but he got back here after he had a baby with this Russian lady and brought a Russian bride home in the 60s. Now, that's strange enough, but the American government lent him the money to travel home, by the way.
A defector. A defector.
A defector.
Yeah.
They lent him the money. The State Department gave him the money. He paid it back in a very weird way. If you take a look at the way he paid it back, and based on what we know about his employment, the money was paid back in a strange way. But he paid off his debt. Has trouble getting jobs and everything else. What does he do when he lands back in the U.S.? He happens to create a fictional chapter of the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, which is a real organization, but his chapter is fictional. He claims to be the treasurer, gets himself into a fight with anti-Castro Cubans while he's out handing out pro-Castro leaflets. Oh, by the way, coincidentally, during a time when the CIA, again, is running a counterintelligence program against the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. Just coincidentally, at that time. Anyway, I have to stop every once in a while so I don't choke on this stuff.
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, there is so much. It is really hard to digest. Even after, 60-some years, it's hard to digest all of this. Also, wasn't he supposedly fairly fluent in Russian?
There's a lot of confusion there. It depends on who you talk to, right? He does seem to have some command of the Russian language, but Russian speakers, including his best friend who was in Russia, still thought to write to him in English and speak to him in English when he could later on, which, by the way, a guy named Ernst Titovitz was actually his friend and does have recordings that the world has still not heard because he has them sitting on a bunch of reel-to-reel tapes and does not want to pay to have them transcribed and all that. But if somebody wants to help him with that, he might be willing. Lots of different things. Wow. 2 kids playing around with a tape recorder because Titovitz was studying the English language and was satisfied that he was a clear native speaker and wanted to study him, which was a little difficult in the Soviet Union at the time. Now, if you listen to the CIA at certain points, and you take a listen to what the people said about his ability to speak when they recorded him in Mexico City a couple of weeks before the assassination, where he's attempting to repatriate himself back into the Soviet Union, maybe, definitely to Cuba, while he meets up in consulates and stuff like that. He makes phone calls where his English is broken, his Spanish is perfect, and his Russian is rough, which makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah. He makes other phone calls and other appearances where his linguistic abilities vary a bit. So there's a lot of controversy here. And in fact, you can ask 2 different people that were intimately involved with him, and you might get very different answers as to exactly what his command of each language was. And nobody ever mentions that Spanish part. But apparently when he called the Cuban embassy, he was quite fluent in it for some reason. If he indeed called the Cuban embassy on the day when it was closed and nobody was supposed to be there anyway. Right. And they couldn't find the transcripts, and they had to go chase that down in the 70s as well. Weird thing, ask a guy named Ed Lopez or Dan Hardaway who did investigations for the HSCA in Mexico City. Did I answer that question? Sorry.
And several others probably all at once. But so are we saying, is the thought that then Lee Harvey Oswald was a CIA operative and it was they who orchestrated the entire thing with the Soviet Union, him defecting, coming back, all of that?
Well, there's the confusing thing, because the people that would have orchestrated the false defector program are other types of military intelligence. Since Oswald was indeed a Marine and actually worked at one of the most secretive bases in the world at Atsugi, Japan, where we had the U-2. By the way, he was a radar operator. He had some sort of clearance. In fact, I've seen it stated that he had a crypto clearance, which is not the highest thing in the world, but it's a clearance nonetheless. The ONI, the Office of Naval Intelligence, might have been involved with that. But then again, we have proof that he was an informant. We have proof he was in contact with the FBI. We do know that the CIA was interested in him, and they falsified part of his 201 file, which is a personnel file generated by the CIA. And even to this day, we have an incomplete personnel file on Lee Harvey Oswald floating around. So it's not an easy question to answer. Different agencies touched him, certainly. Provably. Different agencies were interested in him. Certainly, provably. Was he directly an asset employed by? Hard to say. But did people have hands on him? Were people around him? Indeed, they were. Even George de Mohrenschildt, who has an interesting, history up until the time he suspiciously kills himself. By the way, Bill O'Reilly wasn't there when it happened. Anyway, just saying, there was another reporter there, and a guy named Epstein was around, and it wasn't the guy with the island. No, this was a guy who was writing assassination books, I throw a lot of things in. The deal is, it's very suspicious what happened to a guy named George de Mohrenschildt, who had the wherewithal to write letters to somebody like George H.W. Bush to ask for help because he felt like he was being picked on, while he was making weird deals with the government of Haiti and had apparently been some sort of asset and been associated to various CIA agents, proper CIA agents, like Walton Moore and a bunch of other people, and was also part of the white Russian community in Dallas, who did take care of things like Marina Oswald's teeth because they felt bad for her, and really had a friendship with Oswald and wrote a hard-to-find book about him and all that, which is really interesting as well. I know it seems like I'm going in 100 directions.
No. This is
good
stuff.
There's a reason for it.
Yeah. Okay. So
there is. It is 100 directions.
And that's. I mean, this is the mother of all conspiracy theories, which of course is a term that the government has come up with to discredit anyone that questions the official narrative. But one of the things on this show that our host Pat Gray constantly says about a conspiracy is that you can really see where there's smoke, there's fire, if there's a high body count when it comes to witnesses, because that's kind of like the telltale sign of a cover-up.
Because people can't keep their mouth shut.
Right. We've got to eliminate the witnesses, the people that know too much, that know the truth. And I think with the John F. Kennedy assassination,
there's a trail there.
There is quite a few witnesses, people that went against the official narrative, that turned up dead in a short time after the fact. And I wonder... Suspiciously. And I wonder if you can speak to that, if there's anybody that sticks out in your mind, like Lee Bowers, right? Does he come to mind as a witness that met an early demise that maybe you want to talk about?
Look, there's a lot of interesting people that, came from some pretty dark places in our society that ended up gone pretty quickly, and some cops that disappear and die in strange circumstances afterwards, that's for sure. But you know what I'd like to look at is somebody like Hale Boggs, who became a dissenter and was on the Warren Commission. In fact, it seems like all of the Southern contingent of the Warren Commission sort of later regretted and was sort of snookered by the whole thing, and didn't really like the fact that they had signed off on this nonsense. And Hale Boggs, take a look at the way he died and who he's related to and all that stuff. That's interesting. Certainly a lot of police officers and a lot of underworld figures. Look, when you're dealing with strippers and organized criminals and stuff like that, which is around, and also people that do regularly associate with, let's call them assassins, you're going to find a high body count. Mm-hmm. And it's a bit rough. Now, sometimes people talk about murders that happen. I mean, like how Johnny Roselli ends up chopped up in a drum. Not surprised by that, no matter what his involvement was with the Kennedy assassination, if indeed there ever was one, for the go-between, not the Hollywood Godfather and all that. That's inaccurate. But the FBI had eyes on him at the time. He wasn't personally there. Could he have been somebody involved in things if the Italians were truly involved? Sure, but, same thing. Look, I know it's not just because of my personal ethnic bias, but the fact is that the Italians had no proper motive for doing this, even though people say they wanted their casinos back in Cuba and this and that, and then they claim that that's part of it, which, by the way, gets back to part of the motive for why Kennedy had to go. It's not just about the extraction from this country from Vietnam. It was the refusal to go to war when he had the opportunity repeatedly. No invasion of Cuba. No coming to blows over East and West Germany. Oops, everybody forgot that happened during that time period, right? No going to war. Where was the other place? Well, gee, there was a bunch of other places where they wanted, Laos, and other places where they wanted him to invade. They wanted him to get involved.
His body wasn't even cold when LBJ signed the paperwork to escalate Vietnam. I mean, it was like 2 or 3 days after his death.
Before his body's in the ground again, Friday morning, right? Let's go through a succession of the weekend there. We're starting out on a Friday morning. He gets up. He's making jokes about accompanying Jackie Kennedy to Texas. By the time lunchtime isn't even over, he's dead, declared dead at about 1:30 local time, but that's after, the doctors had to make attempts to save his life, even though it was pointless, because otherwise people would have complained ever after that they had not tried. So let's not blame them for this. But after that, and they fly him back home illegally, take him out of the jurisdiction because, again, it was a local crime. Mm-hmm. The local coroner should have examined this. Earl Rose was the name of the forensic pathologist who should have conducted the botched autopsy. Why am I saying botched? Because by the time they handed it over to the Navy doctors at Bethesda that night, you get one of the worst medical legal autopsies in history ever conducted. Bums on the street would have gotten a better treatment than the president did based on the way that paperwork was filled out, but I digress.
Incredible.
by the time Sunday comes around, Oswald is killed in police custody by a nightclub owner who's doing his patriotic duty. Monday morning, they're burying him. And before any of this is all done, somebody is drawing up paperwork saying, let's escalate the situation in Vietnam.
We're talking to Chuck Ochelli. And you can go to Ochelli.com for more information on Chuck. He's a JFK researcher. Fascinating. This is a rabbit hole that once you start going down it,
I know.
Holy cow. It's amazing. We'll try to unpack some of what we've heard, at least, coming up in just a minute.
Pat Gray Unleashed.
We're in the midst of talking about maybe one of the deepest, most complicated,
no kidding,
rabbit hole conspiracy theories on the planet. It's the ultimate one, maybe. JFK and his assassination. Now, I get just to kind of reset this, and I feel like I'm a little scattershot. I'm shooting with a shotgun here, instead of a precise sniper bullet, but. There's just so much. You don't know really where to start because there's so many motives and so many different players and so many different murders of people who witnessed.
Yes, multiple rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I forget the actual assassination. We're not even there.
Right.
We're all talking the build-up and the surrounding of the assassination. Like our guest mentioned Oswald having the State Department / CIA give him the money to come back to the United States.
After he defected to the Soviet Union.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a common occurrence where, they want to come back home. All right,
fine.
We'll lend him the money.
Give him the cash. But then
incredible.
Our guest said that he paid it back.
Yeah.
And it was a strange way on how he paid it back. I'd like to know that. What's the strange way that he paid it back? There's so many things that you want answers to, and you still aren't at the assassination.
Our guest, by the way, is Chuck Ochelli of ChuckOchelli.com. He's also the host of One Man Gang and a JFK researcher. So, Chuck, I guess after that reintroduction of you, maybe we start with what was the weird way in which Lee Harvey Oswald paid back the government for his trip?
Past 10 years, I've been doing something called the Ochelli effect, by the way.
Okay.
But Oswald and his repayment is fascinating because here's a guy who doesn't have a steady job, according to all available records. Seems to be knocking around. He's having trouble. This is why his wife winds up living with friends of the family, the Paynes, who are another rabbit hole again. And they separate and all this stuff. A guy who worked for Bell Helicopter, etc. Stuff like that. Clearly involved in the military-industrial complex, and his wife, who had a sister who worked for the CIA, looks like, anyway. Stuff like that. And his Russian bride that he was able to get out of the Soviet Union at the height of the Cold War goes to live with her while she's getting ready to have another baby, because they would end up having two kids, Marina and Lee. Anyways, I don't know.
So he just miraculously came up with the money?
Well, here's the thing. He pays off, let's imagine that the amount, I don't have it in front of me this second, but let's imagine the amount is something like $404.38. He sends a money order for like $4.38 and then proceeds to pay off $200, which is really weird for a guy who's out of work. And doesn't have money coming in, and we don't know how he came up with it. A guy who was frugal, according to all accounts, used to, drink a black cup of coffee and eat a cheap sandwich on the daily, except on the day of the assassination. Nobody can find his lunch or the bag that he allegedly brought in curtain rods with, and etc., which is a whole other rabbit hole, while he's working at the book depository building, which he just got that job a couple of weeks before the assassination. He's there to try and fill orders, yes, but he's actually helping to refinish a floor in the book depository building. And, and there's an interesting image of it right there. And he's on the 6th floor, allegedly, even though people don't see him there. People can't quite account for how he got down the stairs quickly enough to run into a police officer less than 90 seconds after the assassination. Oh, by the way, people are unsure about where the elevator was, except for the one guy that they could pressure because he had a criminal record named Charles Gibson. Anyways, you know, that guy, Gibbons, Gibbons was an employee there. Other employees state that they heard, you know, gunshots from the 6th floor and the shells hitting the floor and all this stuff from the alleged sniper den, which he had to have created really quickly, even though photographic evidence shows that the boxes are in multiple different orientations in the window that he allegedly shoots from. There's cameras everywhere. Nobody's got a photograph of that. They have photographs of everything else, including the White House photographer who's got film of even the family that's covering their little children on the grassy knoll, Bill and Gail Newman, right? They get everything except the assassination itself. Oh, wait, there's a couple of amateur photographers who are running movie cameras, 35 millimeter stuff, 8 millimeter actually at the time. Abraham Zapruder, the most famous, he captures the headshot, but there's actually 3 other films that captured the headshot as well from the other side of the street. One of them accidentally, Orville Nix. By the way, nobody knows where that original film is, still Orville Nix's original film. And there's controversy about where the original Zapruder film is, even though the United States government paid something like $15 or $25 million for this thing to collect it as an assassination record. And oh, by the by, didn't take the copyright from the Zapruder family when they did that and paid all that money for it. So they donated a duplicate copy to the 6th floor museum and got themselves a nice tax write-off. All this stuff happened during the Assassination Records Review Board. Am I bringing up too many points too fast here? Because now I'm into investigations and still haven't covered the assassination itself.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah, I know.
Maybe we should talk about what happened with the assassination, because JFK is in this motorcade in downtown Dallas, just a few miles from here. And they are coming toward the supposed shooter, Lee Harvey Oswald's position, right? So it's driving down the street, and then the street curves around and kind of does a U-turn. And supposedly Lee Harvey Oswald doesn't shoot him as he's approaching.
Right.
He waits till the car turns around and is headed the other way to shoot them. And the theory on that is because that was the triangulated location where the other sniper teams were apparently waiting for him. And that's why none of this makes sense, because the single shooter couldn't have done what they say he did, right? Maybe we start with the what shot killed JFK? How many shots were there? And how many witnesses said they heard, what, 5,
multiple
6,
shots.
multiple shots?
Well, look, ear witnesses in a shooting are difficult. So I'll go with even the Warren Commission apologists on that one, where you can say that witnesses could have heard a variety of things.
Could have been echoes.
Based on that, based on their lack of experience. Although guys like Charles Brehm, who had been in combat, knew exactly what a bullet sounded like.
And he was one of the witnesses?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And not the guy who, by the way, is the only positive identification of Lee Harvey Oswald in the window, who's standing across the street looking up 6 floors without his glasses on and can describe his height, weight, eye color. You know, I mean,
really?
It's
Wow.
a little difficult.
Wow.
That's
amazing.
He got a good look.
Yeah.
There was no glare.
Interestingly, I just rewatched JFK yesterday for this, and one of the things that they show is that after the shooting, Lee Harvey Oswald escapes down the street and he goes into a movie theater. And that's the whole thing, that Lincoln was shot in the movie theater, went to a warehouse. Kennedy was shot from the warehouse, went to the movie theater. Anyway, like 30 police officers show up. They don't know yet that it's Lee Harvey Oswald, that he's the one who is being sought for the assassination. But for some reason, there was quite a police presence interested in apprehending him at that particular time. Was there not?
But yeah, going after a cop killer is always the explanation because he allegedly kills Tippit before that.
And that's that's why they supposedly focused on him so hard.
Yeah. But that doesn't explain to me why it is that photojournalists are also present. And there's a huge crowd outside of the police that show up for a guy who allegedly didn't pay for a ticket. That was really the thing. He goes into the movie theater. I'm not kidding here, by the way. A shoe salesman sees him, lurking around on the street. Named Johnny Brewer, says, "Oh, that looks odd." He goes into a movie theater, doesn't pay for the ticket, and walks in, and was hardly noticed. And then the guy who's selling popcorn says, "Maybe we should call the cops." And photojournalists, 30 police, multiple cars, a crowd gathers within moments of this happening. Now, that's pretty wild for a time when we don't have social media, flash mobs, or, the internet, nothing.
Right.
Pretty interesting for 1963, I would say. At a movie theater, which, by the way, still shows shows parts of the films and stops them when the film got stopped, when the cops come in to go arrest them, and all of that good stuff.
Oh, wow.
Where, by the way, he allegedly had picked up his revolver because his escape from the school book depository is even stranger than this. Well, he went to a movie theater. You're leaving some things out. He leaves, gets on a bus, gets a transfer, tries to go through. The bus gets caught in traffic. He jumps off the bus, catches a taxi to go to his rooming house where he picks up a revolver, and a jacket, and then makes a mad dash for the movie theater, which, by the way, is a little difficult logistically to get him there. But anyway, he supposedly makes it there. Oh, and in between getting there, he shoots and kills a cop. Supposedly, right? Who approached him on the street and maybe was trying to catch him on a vague description that went out on the radio. Hey, look, white guy with short hair, maybe was involved in the killing of the president. Be on the lookout. I wonder how many of those there were in Dallas that day.
Just the one. There was just the one.
Just one.
Yeah, we looked into that. There was just one guy.
He stuck out. Anyway, really interesting, the intuition of the Dallas police force.
Yeah.
Too
bad they're not that intuitive today, because there's a lot of crimes that are going unsolved in this town. But anyway, go ahead.
You're talking about the stuff that goes on where people end up in bodies of water. Anyway, look, leave it alone. Not today's issue. The thing is, it's amazing what goes on here. And there are people that were tied to, believe it or not, military intelligence, who are auxiliary officers and all of that kind of stuff, who also had day jobs with the cops. And, a guy named Jack Ruby was hanging around in the police station, by the way, all weekend, while Oswald's being hauled in and out of hallways that are packed, mobbed with reporters and cameras and bulky things, everybody screaming at him. And you can see footage of this now, because that's the day, by the way, network news went live and wide for 24 hours a day, where they did not stop broadcasting the news, the moment-to-moment developments in the assassination from that Friday afternoon, when Walter Cronkite's waiting for a camera to warm up, which is why you see CBS breaking news. They're waiting for the camera to warm up so they can put him on, and he makes that first announcement, with that logo up there. And NBC forgot to even put in a videotape, for the first, 15 minutes of the broadcast on the assassination that day. So that's why there, as it happened, is missing the first 15 minutes. Interesting how the news went live and all of the conflicting reports that occurred there. Some fascinating information is developed moment to moment. A lot of falsehoods are found out. Oh, by the way, when I brought up that thing that he did in New Orleans where he was handing out the Fair Play for Cuba committee literature? Well, it just so happens that WDSU-TV and some guy who also happened to be CIA funded was out there, patriotism as an anti-communist, had to interview him for some obscure radio show. That stuff traveled around the country and was being used in the news coverage almost immediately. Again, amazing for an age when we don't have the ability to share content on YouTube and whatnot, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just saying.
Am I right, Chuck, in believing that the kill shot came from the front?
Okay. Depends on who you talk to. I would agree with you. And a forensic, examiner named Sherry Feaster, who wrote a book called Enemy of the Truth.
And by the way, that's important because Oswald was behind him.
He waited for the car to go around the bend.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey,
all right, go ahead.
You only stole part of my punchline. But the thing is, always and all along, two shots landed because, by the way, the third shot which caused them to have to invent the magic bullet, wounds a guy named James Tegg who's standing under a railroad bridge, and they had to account for that shot as well when they only stated that there were 3 shots, considering there were only 3 shells found allegedly on the 6th floor of the school book depository building. But pay no attention to the witnesses that saw other things strike things like the grass on the other side of the street, or the manhole cover, or et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, if you walk into Dealey Plaza, somebody will come by and tell you about it. All you got to do is wait there for about 5 minutes, and someone will show up to do it. They'll tell you about the other bullets. They'll tell you about the other shooters. They'll tell you about the acoustic evidence. Oh, by the way, that's something else that was developed in the 1970s off of the Dictabelt recording of the police broadcasts from that day, which has now been disputed by different experts, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. But
again, I would look for a guy named Dr. Thomas to see how he explains the order and the data there. But over and over again, we've had investigations. And here's the fascinating part about this overall, to put it in a real serious nutshell, if you think about it. In any murder case, in any murder mystery case, you ever notice if you watch it and it's small town Iowa, it's, you know, it's this weird spot in Jersey, it's in California, wherever it is, you ever notice that over time the evidence narrows itself down? You eliminate suspects.
Yeah.
You eliminate possibilities. Even mistakes that are made in investigations, forensic examinations, DNA evidence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Over time, with the evolution of technology, the evidence pool whittles down. It narrows as far as your pool of suspects. You get to a conclusion eventually, in some cases where, okay, finally we've got it. We might not be able to bring it to court, but we basically got the idea of what happened here 20 years later, 30 years later.
Yeah, all the other stuff surrounding it goes away.
Yeah, fascinating how in this case it works in reverse.
Yeah, the opposite.
Despite the fact that it's had the largest team of independent researchers, investigators ever in history, probably examining the shortest time period. What we're talking about is, you know, if it's the Zapruder film, it's 26 seconds. If it's the shooting, it's maybe 6 seconds if you look at Josiah Thompson, but I would argue it's 9 seconds. Let's be nice and call it 10 seconds in Dallas. That has inspired all of this ever after.
Yeah.
Thousands of books now, hundreds of films. You know, you mentioned JFK. By the way, if you're going to watch that, it's a little outdated, but it did spawn the Assassination Records Review Board, which got us about 5 million more documents into the National Archives to look at, and got us some interesting gems like Operation Northwoods, like where the concept of conspiracy theory and why it is you label people who are Warren Commission critics conspiracy theorists sent as a memo from the CIA. You can see that because people have been working on this all this time. But you don't have a narrow pool of suspects. You don't have a presentable and historical record here that has made itself clear over time, even with the French perspective of 75 years of perspective. You don't have it, even at 60 years, 61 years. But we're going to keep going no matter what, those of us that are still dedicated to it, and even suing the Biden administration right now.
Yeah.
The Mary Farrell Foundation is doing that. Why? Oh, by the way, here's a one side or the other, it doesn't really matter argument, just for you real quick. 2017, after 25 years of waiting from the Assassination Records Review Board, you know, concluding its business, Donald Trump is supposed to dump all the documents. He doesn't. Biden doesn't either.
We'll get into that and much more coming up in just a few minutes. This is just, there's so much to unravel here. 888-900-3393 if you got some questions for Chuck. Chuck Ochelli, JFK Researcher. We got more coming up.
Pat Gray, Unleashed.
Pat Gray is here on the Blaze Radio Network.
Good morning, Americans. It's Friday.
Welcome. Great to have you. We're right in the midst of Free Think Friday, and we're discussing the JFK assassination this morning. Fascinating stuff with our guest, Chuck Ochelli. We'll get back to him in just a second. First, you know, for 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been America's only Christian conservative wireless provider, and that's one of the reasons it's so great to work with them. They are heavily involved in making the country great again. Glenn and the team there have been great supporters of this show. One of the many reasons we're proud to bring them to you and what they do. Patriot Mobile offers dependable nationwide coverage. They give you access to all three major networks, which means you can get the same coverage you're used to without having to fund the left. They put your money or a portion of what you pay them for with your bill to good use on doing all kinds of things that support your values. Things like free speech, religious freedom, sanctity of life. They support the Second Amendment, our military, veterans, and first responders. Their 100% U.S.-based customer service team makes switching really easy. You can keep your phone number, you can change it, you can keep your phone, or you can upgrade it. Whatever you want to do, they've got a plan to fit your needs and your budget. Go to patriotmobile.com/Pat or call 972-PATRIOT. Get free activation when you use the offer code PAT. So make that switch today. I know you've been thinking about it. This is the time to finally do it. patriotmobile.com/Pat or 972-PATRIOT.
Pat Gray Unleashed.
Got to have a tweet here. Patrick Hill tweets, watch the movie Executive Action from the 70s. Great fiction portrayal of JFK moment. Covers some of what's been discussed. But it's fictional? Interesting. All right.
We got enough to handle with the facts.
I know.
I know.
The facts seem like fiction. It's just so incomprehensible.
It sure is.
So we're going to get, let's play the Ron Paul statement. Where was he in this?
This is on Tim Pool's.
Was it Tucker Carlson?
No, Tim Pool's show a few months ago. Yeah.
Oh, just a few months ago.
Yeah.
Here's what he said.
I do believe there has been a coup and it's been taken over. And if I want to just put the date in my mind. And anybody could pick probably any date in the last 100 years. But I have picked November 22nd, 1963.
What happened on that day?
Oh,
that was the day Kennedy was murdered by our government.
Wow.
By the CIA.
Yeah.
Okay, so he calls it in the interview with Tucker Carlson, he calls it a coup d'etat.
Oh.
And that's the moment that America changed forever.
Yeah.
Because a coup was committed in this country.
Yeah.
So Chuck Ochelli, the blind JFK researcher, joins us today, also host of the Ochelli Effect. Chuck, was JFK or LBJ involved in the assassination of JFK? Did he plan it? Did he orchestrate it? Did he order it?
LBJ, to my opinion, now there are people that vary on this quite a bit, okay? To my opinion, this is a guy who was kind of tapped on the shoulder and said to get ready because I think you're going to be president real soon. I think somebody made him aware. Is he a criminal? Yes. Definitely belongs in your pool there again. I love that. Did he have bagmen? Was he getting bribes? Was he making money off of land that was underwater? I mixed that up. Was he getting cotton allotments sent to his friends? Did he have corruption? Did he have payoffs? Did he have other people probably killed? Indeed, he did, according to a lot of other people that are not necessarily reliable witnesses even. He had a lot of stuff going on. Stolen elections. Box 46, look that one up. Lots of things going on with LBJ. Was he somebody who masterminded this? Not to my satisfaction. He didn't have the reach to do all what's been done here. Is he somebody who was involved with oil men, underworld business, et cetera, et cetera? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Check every box twice.
And would have been happy when they tapped him on the shoulder and said, dude, get ready.
Yeah, he was a terrible human being. We've got Tyler Morgan, member of the audience, who tweeted out, interesting aside, a Texas oil man, D. Harold Bird, that was a major financial backer to LBJ, was the owner of the Texas School Book Depository at the time. What?
Yes.
See, there's so many connections. That's the thing.
There are. Yeah, there really
you
are.
Want to know what's really funny is some years ago I tried to get a listing of the people that were in. There's a sister building to the Texas School Book Depository called the Dow Tex Building, and it's across the street nowadays. It's where the bookstore is for the 6th floor museum. But back then, it was a sister building, another place where businesses and organizations rented space. I'll tell you what, I challenge any listener out there to find out who was actually in residence in that building in 1963. Because myself and the people at the 6th floor museum couldn't even put our heads together. And by the way, I'm not on their side, but they do have an amazing repository of information. We could not find out who all of the residents were of the Dow Tex building in 1963, even back when Gary Mack was alive. I was trying to sort that out because allegedly, there may have been people that were positioned in strange places in the Dow Tex building, which would have given them an interesting perspective for, indeed, a shot to the back, which did also happen.
Okay, so if it was not LBJ who orchestrated this, who ordered this, planned it, who was it? Was it Allen Dulles because JFK fired him from director of CIA? Is that enough motive? Was there... who did this?
$1 million question, okay? And is it Allen Dulles? Well, Allen Dulles definitely was involved in controlling the cover-up. Why do I say that? Because mathematically, the Warren Commission should have really been called the Dulles Commission.
Right.
Why? Because he was more involved in questioning, manipulating the investigation, pushing the direction of the investigation, and I'm taking this from their records, their secret sessions, which were only made public some years ago, long after the event. Allen Dulles wasn't fired, but was asked to resign after the Bay of Pigs, along with the rest of... By the way, when I was leaving Dallas, I found something interesting. The Cabell CIA building is on my way to the Greyhound station because I took a Greyhound out of there in 2017. And I'm walking by, I look up, and I'm looking at the Cabell CIA, building. And Earl Cabell was the mayor of Dallas at the time. Charles Cabell was one of the people dismissed along with Allen Dulles at the time. And Dulles, who winds up controlling the Warren Commission and saying things like, well, the CIA already told me they had nothing to do with this. Is it the CIA? I'm not satisfied it's the CIA. The answer here is about the beneficiaries.
Okay.
The people that are clearly defined as tied to the military-industrial complex, and that's an overgeneralized term.
Yeah.
They're the people that had the most to gain by getting JFK the hell out of the way.
So the motive for that then would be the fact that JFK apparently planned to end our involvement in Vietnam, was going to pull U.S. Operatives out of Vietnam, and that would have affected the military-industrial complex, right? Defense contractors
they
and
were
the
gearing
like.
up for that, and
they don't make the money that they would otherwise make.
Right, and earlier we talked about how there were other events that the complex wanted him to attack and use our military, and he wouldn't do it.
So that's what you believe is that
overall that's the generalized motive that I could easily go with, because again, Cuba, Laos, Vietnam, Germany, he wasn't going to make the military move, and there were opportunities to do that. We almost came to blows over East and West Germany. You know that thing called the Berlin Wall that came down? Remember when it was being erected, okay, folks? But there was stuff that we didn't know publicly for a long time about that, and how close we came to nuclear war with the Cuban Missile Crisis, how the military hawks said, look, we can win. And by the way, we can listen to this now. If you get tapes from the JFK library nowadays, you can hear his Joint Chiefs of Staff talking about we can win in a first strike scenario in a nuclear exchange with the Soviet Union.
Jeez,
we can do this. Why not do it? They're pushing him to go forward. He's refusing.
No.
And then he wants all personnel, and that's not just military personnel. He wants everybody out of Vietnam by the end of calendar year 1965, according to National Security Action Memorandum 263. So these things are provable. These things are there. He was definitely not all about coming to blows during the Cold War. He might have wanted to keep the Cold War cold. He wasn't a dove, but he wasn't a hawk either. Some people have kind of, retconned his political stances and his posture as less bellicose and all that nowadays. Truth is, though, he wasn't looking for the war to go hot. And that's where the real money is, because then you can rebuild the things you blow up, and you can buy lots of helicopters, you can buy lots of bombs and uniforms and rations and everything else that goes into the business of warfare. From the medical to the, like I say, to toilet paper, all of it goes into it, and there's a lot of money to be made there.
And when he took over, LBJ reversed all of those policies. Right, he enmeshed us so deeply into Vietnam that we barely were able to extract ourselves 12 years later. So there's a lot of motive there for the defense industry.
Yeah.
I mean, Vietnam, as you mentioned, the Bay of Pigs, they were upset. They wanted to go back and try it again, right? The CIA and military operatives wanted to go back and try to take Cuba again, take it away from Castro this time.
Yeah, there was lots of different proposals about that, contingency plans, different operations proposed by the CIA, which at the time was named in documents as QBARC under the code words of the day, which, by the way, you should really look up the cryptonyms of all these things when you're looking at these documents so you know what you're reading, because you'll see QBARC and AM World and AM Expanse and all these different operations, and you need to know what they mean. So it's one of these difficult things when going through millions of pages of documents. It's kind of good to have the key to know who we were talking about at different times. But, all of that is relevant, and I think that's the key motive. That, to me, is the best motive. But was he challenging the CIA? Sure. Was he challenging, big business? Absolutely. Was he looking to take away the oil depletion allowance? Yes, he was. Was he telling U.S. Steel to knock it off with your price gouging? Yeah, and he threatened them too, and threatened to use the government as a weapon against them if they didn't listen. He was doing a lot of things like that, and Wall Street wasn't thrilled, and also organized crime wasn't thrilled because his brother was going after them. So
that's why I thought it was Frank Sinatra, but apparently not.
Again, a guy from Jersey. I don't know if anybody can tell from my accent, but I didn't grow up in Georgia. Sinatra, I get it. He's got his connections, and he certainly had a role to play as far as his campaign goes in 1960. And some people claim that, the mob was a little pissed off because he helped them win Illinois. They helped JFK win Illinois, and maybe they felt burned because his brother was going after him. Yeah. But there's a whole history there. I mean, and it's not all in one direction, by the way, because Bobby Kennedy worked for McCarthy also. Let's not forget that.
No kidding.
Bobby Kennedy also authorized, the wiretapping of Martin Luther King Jr., even though he becomes a civil rights figure later.
Right.
And I'm not smearing Bobby Kennedy. And by the way, I'm not even going to get into the dark side of Camelot and what Seymour Hersh did with that later on. And all of this stuff where they've got a guy who's, basically got a broken back and on drugs, performing sexual acrobatics that would amaze many people. He probably made time for Marilyn Monroe, but give me a break.
Hey, I got a question for you here, Chuck. I don't know if you're familiar with this picture. It's when LBJ is getting ready to take the oath of office. He's standing there with Jackie, and he turns around, and in the background is a Congressman, Albert Thomas. And Albert Thomas is winking, and the camera catches him in mid-wink, winking at LBJ as LBJ is becoming president of the United States. I just wondered if you had a take on that in this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. A fascinating image there that you can study. Jackie Kennedy, still spattered in her husband's blood, insisted, LBJ did, that he stand next to her in a photo op there, which was done on what would become Air Force One once the president boarded the plane. And this going on, a lot of weird stuff here. By the way, LBJ didn't even need to be sworn in. And despite that, he calls up Bobby Kennedy and makes him go get a copy of the oath of office to be handed to Sarah Hughes so she can swear him in, a lady judge, which was, I think, JFK appointed, who was, holding back tears while she's swearing in LBJ. It was unnecessary. Based on the Constitution, guess what? LBJ became president the moment that Kennedy was incapacitated. So not necessary, but they did it anyway. And by the way, it's similar to the oath the vice president has to take. So he's already sworn the oath to defend the Constitution.
Good point.
So,
Yeah, interesting.
All right, we got all around him. That image is interesting for a lot of reasons, but the wink Yeah, people bring that up a lot as part of Johnson's proof of guilt. Good.
More coming up in just a minute. First, let me tell you about BackyardButchers.com. They're delivering American-raised and harvested meat from right here in America, in American backyards, which is thus the name, obviously, to your dinner table. It's fantastic because you'll see these products of the USA labels on some of our meat. That doesn't mean anything. That just means it was packaged here. That doesn't mean the meat came from here. Is that incredible? It's hard to believe that they're able to do that. They're trying to change that, but they have not yet. Grass-fed, grain-finished, tastes amazing. Fantastic meat. Cut out the frustration from the meat aisle and go to BackyardButchers.com. You'll save an extra 20% off your entire order by using the promo code UNLEASHED. And when you subscribe, you'll get an additional 10% off and free shipping. So go to BackyardButchers.com/unleashed. They've got over 500,000 happy customers across America, hundreds of 5-star reviews on Google, and it's American customer service. You're not going to have to deal with somebody who doesn't speak the language, which is nice. Get the person in your house who buys the groceries to go to BackyardButchers.com/unleashed. BackyardButchers.com/unleashed. Buy all U.S. American beef right from the American heartland. You'll save 20% off your entire order, and when you subscribe, get that additional 10% off and free shipping. Backyard Butchers, they're on a mission to bring American-raised, harvested, and affordable meat back to the United States. BackyardButchers.com/unleashed.
Pat Gray, Unleashed.
Joined this morning for our JFK discussion by the blind JFK researcher, Chuck Ochelli of the Ochelli Effect. Somebody who's... how long have you been on the JFK assassination, Chuck?
Oh, I started in high school, I guess. It was about 1988 or so, around the 25th anniversary.
Wow.
Started doing real research then, which is odd because I stumbled into it accidentally. I was a musician. And I started traveling a little bit, and I would call people in different towns that I read about in books and say, hey, I read this account. Is this true? I got hung up on a lot, but I started talking to some people who were witnesses. So, that's where it began.
Okay.
And from there, I'm self-taught. Yeah.
Speaking of witnesses, this might be a good time to ask, how many of the witnesses to the JFK assassination turned up dead shortly thereafter? Dying from maybe mysterious circumstances?
Well, the actual witnesses in the plaza, or are we talking about just two various events?
Yeah, various events, too. Okay. Give me both if you have those numbers.
In the plaza, not so many. I mean, you have the suspicious death of Lee Bowers after he gives testimony.
And who was Lee Bowers?
He was an operator for the railroad there, and there's a tower that's over, because there's a railroad bridge and a switch part there, and a bunch of things. And there was a tower in the proximity there with a bird's eye view on the parking lot that's connected to the school book depository building, where Bowers observed some odd behaviors. You see it well dramatized in the movie JFK, actually, which, by the way, if you ever watch that movie and don't get the book of the film, which has an annotated script in it to explain why it is they put those things in there, because you guys were talking about this, fictional film is one thing, but even executive action had a lot of historical research inserted into it that maybe was controversial at the time, and they used to actually hand out pamphlets at the movie theater explaining some of the stuff that went into executive action in 1972 maybe. I mean, I was only born in 72, so I didn't see this, but I happen to know that that's part of it, and JFK the same way. There's an annotated script to explain why some of the things are in there. Clearly it's a dramatization, clearly it's an exaggeration, and clearly it's Oliver Stone's vision, but it's also informed. Take a look at the books he licensed for it, including JFK in Vietnam by John Newman, which I think is one of the most pivotal and underrated books regarding the assassination, which made the original argument, which at one point was seen as crazy by people like Noam Chomsky, that he was extracting us from Vietnam. And that's part of the motive. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, Lee Bowers, explain what he witnessed from his perch.
Well, he saw a lot of strange activity in the parking lot and claimed to have seen people by the fence. He wasn't sure why he was seeing this. And that leads into another question I think you guys are going to have to get to soon, which is all about some of the strange things that were photographed in Dealey Plaza. But he's one of the only firsthand witnesses at the moment that really died under strange circumstances from the plaza.
He saw a flash, right?
Well, I don't know if he saw a flash because it depends on when you're reading what you're reading and how manipulated it was and what was placed on the record and what wasn't placed on the record by the Warren Commission. So as far as his accounts and what he would say later and his interviews publicly, there's a variety of statements here. So
what the assumption is that he saw some strange things, meaning maybe these were the other shooting teams, right? The assassins that had triangulated where they were going to shoot from, and that was one of the locations. So how did he die? How did he die?
Yeah, the picket fence, and he dies having a heart attack and having a car accident all by himself on a road, right?
Oh, okay.
It happens.
And by the way, a bunch of people that happened to, actually, that were connected to the case somehow or other, they seem to have one-car accidents on a road all by themselves, which does happen, but a little too often.
It's dangerous out there.
Yeah, be careful.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Drive safely, everybody. Wear your seatbelt.
Thank you.
Of course, in 1963, not a lot of people did.
No.
Right.
Okay, so... I mean, just the strangeness of Lee Harvey Oswald being the shooter who then just a couple days later is himself murdered in police custody in the basement of the police station by this club owner, Jack Ruby, who's got mob ties apparently. And then he himself, speaking of people turning up dead, dies of a coronary embolism a few years later in jail.
Was he not sick as well?
They said he had cancer, but a lot of people dispute that.
Yeah, that's kind of like the one-car accident.
Yeah.
Oswald's killer, which I'm satisfied to say he did actually kill Oswald.
Yeah.
Because it was broadcast live on television on one network.
Yes.
But every network captured it. Anyway, another interesting circumstance where nobody can figure out actually how he got in there because the cops standing at the ramp didn't see him. One on each side watching it, and one of them I'm sure was absolutely honest out of the two. But anyway, it's fascinating that he got there. Yeah, cancer is what killed him, I'm pretty sure. And really weird, his behavior afterwards. And oh, by the way, you want to get deep into the rabbit hole, there's a guy named Jolly West who shows up in a lot of conspiracy theories because he is connected to MK Ultra.
There it is.
And believe it or not, crazy statements coming out of Jack Ruby's mouth about him hearing murders going on and hallucinations and trying to kill himself by sticking his finger into a socket and bashing his own head up against the wall and all these other wild behaviors in jail after he's visited by a guy named Jolly West who's known to have dosed people, according to many theories. And by the way, Jolly West shows up with Sirhan, with Charles Manson, and it goes on and on and on.
Oh, we need to explore that. We're coming up against a break. We need to explore Jolly West. I'm unfamiliar with Jolly. All right. Jeez. Again,
so much.
This rabbit hole is
so much
deep and complicated.
If you put this conspiracy theory on a chart, it would branch out forever.
Yeah. Can you imagine Glenn trying to outline this on a chalkboard? You'd need 80 chalkboards.
Maybe more.
Wow. Amazing. We'll get into Jolly coming up here in a minute.
Have to know about Jolly.
That seems fascinating. We should talk a little bit about Allen Dulles and what he oversaw over the years as director of the CIA. Longest serving director of the CIA, and oversaw an awful lot of interesting projects. Get into that coming up.
This is Pat Gray Unleashed.
All right, it's our Free Think Friday show, the JFK edition. We got the blind JFK researcher, Chuck Ochelli, with us, host of The Ochelli Effect. Chuck, you just brought up something interesting. Another little rabbit hole item that we need to travel down. Jolly West, somebody I'm not familiar with. Jolly West and Jack Ruby. What is the situation there?
Well, again, this is a guy who was linked to the MK Ultra project, which we would have never found out about, except that Alan Dulles forgot to destroy the financial documents, so somebody had to reconstruct it forensically in order to assemble it and present it to you. And now today we know about the involvement of the Canadian government, academia, and our government in all sorts of mind control experiments, LSD, etc., a terrible lie, wormwood. These are key phrases you could go look up and find out all about it. I mean, there's a guy whose, son finds out that why did my father fall out of a window in New York City, in 1950, whatever. Oh, gee, it turns out that he was a doctor who was also involved with the testing and dosing people with LSD. And that's just one aspect of it. And this Jolly West shows up in all these places. He's connected to that program as much as Gottlieb or anybody else. And Dulles, again, it's fascinating because going back to the 1950s, if you look up something called the Assassination Guide, at least that's what we, call it lovingly in the research community, it is effectively a guide explaining how it is you conduct terrorist activities, assassinations, how it is you set up a patsy and everything else. A document designed to never be seen by the public, but circulated in CIA in order to explain a step-by-step on how to do this. Funny thing is, my favorite phrase in it, explaining all this and how you employ criminals, by the way, into your organization and all that, which we found out about in the 1970s because of the congressional investigations. But in the 50s, they were talking about this internally because they were doing it. My favorite part of it is, don't write any of this on paper. And I'm reading a paper document that contains this information. So I love it. I love the efficiency of the agency that Alan Dulles wasn't the creator of, but definitely was a champion of. And oh, by the way, for some reason, was highly motivated to be involved in the cover-up after the assassination. See, that's the fun part about this, too, is that you have the cover-up and you have the assassination, and both of them are extensive as far as what you got to study to understand what's actually happening, when it's happening, and what it is we learn later because we force things out like the Family Jewels, like Operation Northwoods, like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's on the side of the issue regarding all these things. So anyway, continue on. I mean, Dulles, where do you want to go?
Dulles, part of the Warren Commission. Now, apparently, anybody who kind of went against the mainstream thought process of where the Warren Commission was going, which was Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone shooter. There was no conspiracy, essentially. It seems that anybody who went against that narrative was threatened by J. Edgar Hoover, among others.
Well, Hoover's funny, too, because Hoover in his own handwriting states that he feels like he's being lied to by the CIA about everything from Oswald in Mexico City, which we brought up earlier,
right?
To where he was. Oh, by the way, his mother, Lee Harvey Oswald's mother, sent a letter to Hoover trying to find out what happened to her son for a couple of months. Hoover's looking for him. There was a flash alert that was among many federal agencies that was dropped, coincidentally, only a few weeks before the assassination, even though this guy was a defector, even though he was known to be a Castro sympathizer, even though he was, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of a sudden, government agencies went, well, he's not that big a priority, just before the assassination. Fascinating that happens. Hoover felt like he was lied to, but also participated in a cover-up. The Gimberling report, which effectively is 300 pages of this is what we think happened, and he had a bunch of stuff wrong. Even when he's talking to LBJ on the phone, he says, he shot from the 5th floor of the bookstore there, and Johnson's like, hey, any bullets coming for me? During a conversation. I find that one fascinating. But because Johnson, I don't think knew the details altogether,
right,
and was a little nervous that, hey, I might get taken out too. They can tell me anything if I'm dead tomorrow, right? So I don't know what was going on with Johnson there, but he was the way he reacted afterwards. Yeah,
strange.
Yeah,
really
strange. What about Woody Harrelson's dad? Was he involved in this?
Not to my mind, no. He's to my mind, he actually. It's funny. He did kill a federal judge. He was a killer. Ask Woody Harrelson about his father, and I don't know what kind of reaction you're going to get, but I don't think he likes talking about it too much. Although Woody Harrelson's done some interesting work in recent years, even playing E. Howard Hunt in a TV series not long ago. I found that one fascinating. But yeah, Charles Harrelson, definitely a criminal, a killer, killed a federal judge, went to prison for that.
But you don't think he was involved in the assassination?
Nah, they try and tie him to one of those tramps and all that, and it does visually look like him for sure, but not at that time. It's just really weird. Of course, one of those guys looks like E. Howard Hunt too, but again, not during that time period. Weird stuff there regarding those three guys.
You bring up the three tramps. Yeah, tell us about the three tramps.
Well, they were arrested, and there's always been controversy about who they actually were. Did they have anything to do with anything? But they were on a train car when the trains all got stopped, by the way, connected to Lee Bowers and him being in the control tower, right? And the police arrested these guys, paraded them through Dealey Plaza, and there's been a lot of speculation over the years. But here's the thing. I don't see any plausible evidence that they were tied to the assassination itself.
All right.
But they are a weird sideline in this whole thing, and worthy of investigation, but I'm satisfied that at the end of it, they're just
have anything to do with it. Okay. Umbrella Man. What about him?
Well, there's a fascinating one. This guy claims, Louis Witt, I think was his name, when they brought him before the House Select Committee, to bring his umbrella even to, Congress in the 70s. He brings his umbrella, says, I was the umbrella man. Why was I there? Because I was protesting against JFK, reminding him of his father, an appeasement, which, by the way, Joseph Kennedy Sr. was, a diplomat for the U.S. and was the ambassador to England and all that at a certain point, and was part of the people that said leave Hitler alone, maybe, during World War II and all that. And so this guy's out there trying to remind him of Neville Chamberlain with the umbrella, supposedly. Weird explanation for a guy who's opening and closing an umbrella at the moment of the assassination, right there in proximity to where Kennedy's killed. Weird things. Some people claim there was a dart in there. Some people claimed he was a signal man. I'm satisfied that he is something, and that Louis Witt is probably not even the guy, even though Congress told us he was. But that is a weird sort of unsolved rabbit hole in my mind still.
And the magic bullet theory. This is a bullet that was apparently fired by Lee Harvey Oswald. It went through JFK, did a right turn, did a left turn, wound up in Connolly's body, and then eventually they found it laying around somewhere. Was it on the gurney? Walk us through the magic bullet and how it turned out to be pristine at the end.
Tough one. Okay, Commission Exhibit 399 is what you see a picture of, and that is a Mannlicher Carcano bullet that was allegedly fired from the Oswald gun, which is allegedly Oswald's gun. A lot of questions along that path, but keep going. This bullet shows up, and now we have controversy, a bunch of them. Even in recent years, a Secret Service agent claiming that he literally physically placed the bullet on the stretcher at Parkland Hospital, which, by the way, the bullet's discovered on a stretcher way later, on the wrong stretcher, not Connolly's stretcher, because don't forget Governor Connolly was wounded as well. Not on Kennedy's stretcher, but on another stretcher that happened to be in the hallway that a janitor was trying to move to clear a path to the bathroom. And that's where this bullet is, and it makes a journey to the White House eventually, although in the official record there's actually 2 journeys for this bullet. And you can look back to a guy named Ray Marcus who called it the bastard bullet and wrote a monograph about it. But many people have examined this over the years. We have a piece of evidence here where this bullet is barely deformed. It's very slightly deformed. It is missing a little bit of material, and seems as though if somebody allowed us to extract the metal fragments from John Connolly's body, which were still in him when he died many years later, we might find more metal fragments than could have possibly came from that bullet in John Connolly's body. A thing that's supposed to have done 7 wounds, smashed a wrist bone, broken ribs, gone through Kennedy's body. And by the way, the left and right turn, maybe not exactly that way, but this thing does defy logic as far as its trajectory. But, it's not exactly as dramatic as they show you. Turns left, stops in midair, all that.
Right.
But it's weird, especially trying to line it up with the photographic evidence of the shooting. You got a hard time with it. And the Warren Commission had a real hard time with it.
How much of this did Jim Garrison have right? He's actually the one person who brought a criminal trial resulting from the assassination, and he tried to convict. Is it Clay Shaw? Is that who was on trial?
Clay Shaw.
So how much of this did he have right? He was a district attorney in New Orleans and became interested in this, realized that the Warren Commission made no sense, and tried to make some sense of this situation.
Well, it's funny. It always indicates to me something interesting when the government turns against the government. And literally the CIA dispatched people to interfere with this guy. There was all sorts of assets meant to interfere with his investigation. At the end of the day, he had a hold of a CIA asset that the CIA did not want to own, although in later years, in recent years, we have documentation that shows that Clay Shaw was indeed connected to the CIA, though they denied it at the time. But did Garrison have stuff right? I can't see how he could have. He had so much interference and so much chaos around him and so much disinformation going against him in the media that I don't think it was possible for him to get at it. He tried like hell. He is the only person to ever bring a public prosecution in the case.
Yeah.
But he failed, and he's the protagonist in the movie JFK with good reason. But again, a fascinating character in and of himself. And oh, by the way, not a guy who was a wide-eyed conspiracy theorist to begin with. He had worked for the FBI. He had been in the military. He had been a prosecutor and later on became a judge. So, not exactly a Boy Scout by all accounts, but not just a conspiracy nut, if you will, that turns out to be, something interesting, an interesting footnote in history. And unfortunately, if his investigation wasn't interfered with, he may have gotten to a lot more than he did.
I mean, one of the issues with this particular case is that when you start looking into it and you go down all these hundreds, if not thousands, of rabbit holes, then you too are labeled the conspiracy nut. I mean, you're part of the problem. Right. It's just amazing. It's unbelievable.
Do you get that? You get people trying to discredit you, coming after you, and calling you a conspiracy nut?
Well, yeah, all the time I used to get that. Nowadays, I'm actually more misrepresented as a guy who's probably being an apologist for the official story, which is totally wrong. But the reason is I discount a lot of things that are foolishly put out there, that people find romantically interesting, that is part of the mythology, because there is a literal mythology that has been built up around this too. Yeah. And there is false information out there, people trying to capitalize on it. I'll tell you, it ranges anywhere from that Secret Service agent recently getting his book, to #1 on Amazon for an account that makes no sense with all the evidence, honestly, even though it's supposed to be a great revelation. Everywhere from him to Judy Baker, who I think is full of crap directly.
And who is Judy Baker?
She claims to be Oswald's girlfriend in New Orleans, if you haven't seen her somewhere. And if you haven't, God bless you.
All right. Chuck, fascinating. I mean, this could fill, I don't know, a whole week of shows or more. Appreciate the information.
That's why he does the Ochelli effect.
That's probably why. Yeah.
There you go.
Where would you send people to hear more from you?
Ochelli.com. All you got to do is know how to spell my name, which is OCHELLI.com. You start there and you can find everything. You got people on Twitter. Clearly, they're messaging me through there now and seeing me on your show, and I really appreciate you guys. I want to give you a shout out there. I'm Ochelli Effect on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it now. And Ochelli.com. That's the best place to start, but I'm all over the place, 24/7 radio stream. Podcasts every week. I'm going to be the MC of the Lancer Conference again this year. It's not been announced yet, but I'll let you know it's going to actually be held on the 22nd this year.
Great.
So there you go.
It was fascinating. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Talk to you again sometime. I think he mentioned that he's coming to town end of the year. Maybe we'll have him back on to discuss this because it's fascinating. There's just so much. I mean, seriously, you can't. I don't even know where to take it. There's so much.
I know.
You know?
They're with you.
And everything that you hear is like, wait a minute, what? You want to go down that road, too.
I know. When he starts talking about, and I didn't go back to it, but I want to know about the manhole cover.
Next time.
Because I do not believe that I've ever heard that before. I heard all, I
haven't either.
Everything.
I have not heard.
Most everything. I don't know that I knew Jolly Rancher guy.
Jolly West, yeah.
I don't know that I knew the Jolly Rancher guy, but
I did not.
I did not know the manhole cover theory. I'm not sure I know about that one.
If you watch JFK, and I recommend you do because it's fascinating, and I think he got a lot of things right. Frankly, I don't know if everything is right, but he got a lot of things right.
Well, get the pamphlet. Follow along.
I will.
What they used.
I will. But it's clear the Warren Commission had no interest in the truth.
No.
Right.
Absolutely none.
No.
Lee Harvey Oswald was not the lone shooter. I mean, that's asinine to even think that. Because then you have to believe the magic bullet theory, that it went through JFK, did right turns, went out of his body into Governor Connolly, and then wound up on a gurney somewhere at a hospital in Dallas, Texas. Come on.
Yeah, and I know I always bring this up, and it's tough to find, but if you want a fascinating read, it's the Robert Morrow book, Firsthand Knowledge, How I Participated in the CIA Mafia Murder of President Kennedy. Depending on when you're looking for it, the price varies, but it's I believe it.
CIA, Mafia, Cuban, Soviet assassination of JFK. I mean, if you include all of them, the truth is in there somewhere.
Yes.
Right? Because it just wasn't some crazy guy who decided, you know what, I'm going to get in the bookstore where I work.
Right.
And I'm going to shoot him from the sixth floor.
And just so you know, exactly.
Crazy.
This guy, Robert Morrow, who bought this book, or wrote this book, he unwittingly secured the 3 rifles for the shooters of JFK, and he manipulated the radios that were used to communicate there in the plaza. So, I mean, he's
interesting.
He was heavily involved without knowing it until it was too late.
And it's fascinating because a lot of people looked into this but found nothing really eventually. I mean, there's so much here. How do you say, it was Lee Harvey Oswald, as the Warren Commission did?
Nothing.
Then you've got the House Select Committee on Assassinations in 1979 that concludes, there was probably something there, but we're not going to say what. Oh, okay. But what we did discover was the CIA was not involved in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. The CIA had nothing to do with it. What? Okay. All righty. And then Clay Shaw, who was just a local businessman in Dallas, who apparently was part of the LGBTQ committee or community in this town, and very much aware and familiar with Lee Harvey Oswald and many others who were part of this investigation, part of the ancillary group that was maybe involved in the shooting.
Right.
And he was exonerated after the trial. He was found not guilty. I mean, so many things happened here that just don't make any sense. It's really hard, seriously, to know which direction to really go on it.
Well, one
There's
direction
too much.
In one direction, I got to get my JFK joke in. One direction you don't want to go is you don't want to blame Fort Worth for anything. I mean, he was in town.
You're right.
JFK was in town, had breakfast in Fort Worth. Mm-hmm. Then he went to Dallas.
Right.
So Fort Worth is like, hey, he was fine when he left here.
No, it's good.
Too soon. Yeah, too soon.
It is?
Yeah, it's only been 61 years.
61 years. Not quite the time, Jeff. So I'm not familiar with this book at all, but I'm just looking here that Jim Mars, I guess, wrote a book called Crossfire. Again, I have no idea about this book at all, but you and I have been talking about the trail of witnesses who died mysterious deaths. Mm-hmm. He claimed in his book...
17, by the the way, that we've counted.
Yeah, well, he claims there's 103 people
who
died
we're getting into Clinton territory now.
Yeah, we are.
Right? So that's his claim, that died mysterious deaths between 1963 and 1976. Granted, I'm sure there were a lot of natural causes in there. That's 13 years.
Yeah.
And accidents.
But there were some suspicious things that happened
People
afterward.
that had information that just mysteriously died and never heard from again.
Let me tell you about something else that you might be fascinated with. In a world that's saturated with agenda-driven humor, we at The Blaze believe that sometimes it's just good to laugh. Just for the sake of laughing, having fun. That's why today we're proud to be releasing our second comedy film, Aqua Donkeys. And if you subscribe at blazetv.com, you can join in on the fun. Last year, we released the comedy Reopening to amazing success. Again, because sometimes comedy is just about being funny. And it was funny. Aqua Donkeys continues that tradition, telling the hilarious story of two optimistic pool boys chasing their dream girl. The world is a pretty dark place sometimes, a lot of the time, as a matter of fact. And while we can't ignore that, every once in a while, it's just good to take a little breather from all the heavy-duty stuff and just have some fun. So you can have some fun with us watching Aqua Donkeys, but only if you're a subscriber. Go to blazetv.com/Aqua Donkeys and subscribe for just $15. How about that? $15. Stay connected, stay informed, and above all, stay hopeful. Aqua Donkeys. Go to blazetv.com/Aqua Donkeys.
This is Pat Gray Unleashed.
Oh, this is good news. Last night, the Democrats raised $26 million.
Yes, they did.
They had a fundraiser in New York City, hosted by Stephen Colbert.
Agonizing.
Biden was there.
Yeah.
Obama was there. Clinton
How
was
exciting,
there.
huh? Look at that.
Man.
All right.
Wow.
Oh, my gosh.
Those are not animatronics.
Yeah, no kidding. They came up on like a thing embedded in the floor, a stage or something, a lift. Oh, my gosh, that was awesome.
Did they?
Yeah. They just...
Like a concert?
Yeah, at the start of this, it just rose
Well,
up.
it was a concert. I mean, Lizzo performed.
Oh, she's great.
Oh, Stephen Colbert.
Queen Latifah would perform.
Oh, man. Some of my favorites.
Ben Platt.
Lizzo.
Yeah.
Queen Latifah.
Ben Platt from Broadway.
Platt, not Pratt. Ben Platt.
And who was the...
Broadway sensation.
Who was
Ben
the DJ?
Platt.
Who was the DJ?
Broadway sensation. Okay.
Stephen Colbert was the host.
Stephen Colbert was the host.
Yeah.
Now, what was going on outside, Jeffy?
There was a gathering of people. Right there on Avenue of the Americas.
A gathering of happy people?
Yeah. Real
Let
happy.
us in! Let us in!
Yeah, that's what they were mad
We
about.
want to see Ben Platt and Lizzo.
Oh, you could see Lizzo from anywhere.
Whoa. Not on this show, my friend.
That's right. We don't tolerate that.
Okay. Not on this show.
Don't we, though?
Look, and Annie Leibovitz, if you spend enough money, if you spent enough money,
you know how much it costs to get a picture taken with the president?
At least $100,000, right?
$100,000.
You were gonna take a picture with all three.
Yeah.
Right.
There was also some kind of package where you could pay $250,000, and I think you get to speak to one of them or something. I don't know. Just unbelievably.
Which one you
stupid.
picking?
Do we have?
But these aren't elitists. These are men of the people. Right? These are for the little guys.
Men of the people.
$26 million raised by the DNC.
One night.
Right?
In one night. Wow.
Don't be sad, though, because Hillary's got one coming up in a month or so.
Oh, so we still have a chance to see some of these people. Will Lizzo be there? Because if not, I'm going to be greatly disappointed.
You're going to have the special performance of Suffs, though, the musical Suffrage from Broadway.
Suffs?
Yeah.
Love Suffs.
I mean,
that's great.
Hillary co-produced that, so
great. You know it's good. Have a great weekend.
This is Pat Gray Unleashed.